Hello again, everybody. Great to have you along in this edition of Journey Through Sports in Life. I'm Scott Murray, along with
Marjorie Herrera-Lewis
and Marnie Schneider.
Yes, indeed. So the M&M twins, delighted to have you here. And we're going to be here this weekend with one of our favorites as we go back in time with one of the great Cowboys as far as wide receivers go. He was something special, along with Tony Hill and Butch Johnson and Hall of Famer Drew Pearson. We're talking about the man they know as White Lightning, Doug Donley. Hello, Doug. How are you?
Hey, Scott. Good to be here.
Well, we're delighted to have you here. I tell you what, girls, I'm going to go ahead and just read a little bio about Doug. And you kind of get the idea. He was something special in three sports, standout back in high school in Ohio in football, track, and basketball. And then, of course, in high school, Doug was recognized as a high school All-American in track, All-State in football, and then was widely recruited in the world of football by The Ohio State University, was co-captain, earned first team All Big Ten and honorable mention All-American accolades at wide receiver back in 1980. And Doug was selected to the All-Century team for Ohio State. And he left Ohio State, The Ohio State, as the all-time leading receiver. Second round draft choice of the Dallas Cowboys in the National Football League back in 1981, playing 4 years under the legendary Tom Landry, and then 1 year for the Chicago Bears under Mike Ditka. And Doug ran in the NFL's fastest man competition, his 4.3 speed in the 40-yard dash, the fastest on the team. He's currently president, CEO of Advantage Hole-in-One in Frisco, Texas. We'll have to have him tell us a little something about that. But in the meantime, throughout his career in sports, he earned the nickname, as I said at the top, White Lightning, for his blazing speed. So, Doug, great to have you on board.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you very much.
Well, I tell you what, Marjorie, who wants to kick it off?
Well, I wouldn't, I'm sorry, Marnie, I just.
Go for it, Marjorie.
I'm familiar with your story, Doug, and you've got a lot that I want to hear throughout this show, from your time playing for Woody Hayes. You were on the field at the moment of impact, as you can say. You know, your how you recruited and how you decided to go to Ohio State. But why don't we start out for the first couple of minutes here on what brought you to football? You're a multi-sport athlete. Why did you settle on football instead of track, for example, where you were, like they say, lightning speed?
Right.
And I tell you what, before you get to that answer, we've got to take one quick break right here at the top of the show. And we're going to be back with White Lightning himself, Doug Donley. Welcome back, Margie, Marnie, and yours truly, Scott Murray, along with Doug Donley. And go ahead, kick it off, Marjorie, with your question.
Yes, Doug. So we were just getting ready to go into your story on what brought you to football. You had plenty of opportunities, I'm sure, with track. So, and I think you were a two-sport athlete at Ohio State, but what brought you to football?
Yeah, I grew up in a little small town in Cambridge, Ohio, and I just love sports. That's just what you did. And my dad, he wanted me to play football and track and baseball, all those things. And I just love football. I love the contact of it, the physicalness of it. And, so I was just drawn to football. I had a shoulder injury in high school, so that kind of took out my baseball opportunities. Yeah, football was just something that I loved. And, and then, had a good high school career, and then, it took off from there.
So weren't you a running back in high school?
I was a running back. Like I said, I had injured my shoulder my sophomore year, so I couldn't raise my arm above my head. And so I was a running back, and I think I only caught 2 passes my senior year because of my shoulder.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then it was Woody Hayes who converted you to wide receiver?
Yeah, so Woody came, and he recruited me. They recruited me as a running back, and so funny story, he was at my house recruiting me, and I was thinking about Ohio State, Michigan, and Notre Dame, and I hadn't made my mind up yet. And so
all good choices.
Yeah, so we're sitting there and eating dinner at my table with Coach Hayes and the assistant coach Alex Gibbs, who went on to coach in the NFL. And the phone rang, and my mom answered the phone, and she said, "Doug, you might want to take this in the back bedroom." And so I got up kind of uncomfortably and left the table and went back, and it was Bo Schembechler, the coach of Michigan. and he was just doing a courtesy call, how they do, and say, Doug, we'd love for you to come to Michigan and you'll have a great career here, and, blah, blah, blah. And so I came back out and sat down, and Woody looked at me and said, who was that on the phone? And I nervously said, that was Coach Schembechler. And so Woody stood up and came down to the end of the table where I was sitting and stuck his hand in my face, literally, and said, I want a verbal commitment that you're coming to Ohio State. And I wasn't going to tell him to sit down. I was scared to death.
No, you're not going to tell him. I need to think about it.
Yeah. So that's how I got. But anyway, Woody, he told me that. Is that how you
proposed to your wife? So she had no choice.
Exactly.
Way too much information.
Yeah. But he said that he would move me out to wide receiver my freshman year so I could, play, which worked out great. I got to play every game as a freshman as a wide receiver. And at Ohio State back then, it really wasn't wide receiver. It was called a wide guard. You blocked every play. So they didn't throw the ball very much. So I was a wide guard.
So you're like a tight end.
Yeah. But and then we recruited Art Schleister end of my freshman year. And so I stayed out there, and at 160 pounds, I'm glad that I did stay out there. So
yeah, really. Wow.
Wait, did Coach Schembechler, did he ever know the story about how you ended up choosing the Ohio State University? Did you ever tell him that? Did you guys ever cross paths afterwards?
Marnie, that's a good question. No one's ever asked me that. And I've told that story a million times, and I don't think that he ever knew that story. That'd be funny, but yeah.
Yeah, really bad timing on his phone call.
Yeah. So very bad.
Good timing for Ohio State, but
I know. But Schembechler probably thinking if I hadn't called, he might not have committed yet.
Right.
But that's a great story.
It is a great story, and of course, growing up in Ohio, born and raised in Ohio, then you end up going to the Ohio State University. Who, as a kid, and then you end up with the Dallas Cowboys in the National Football League. Who did you root for as a kid? The Cleveland Browns, or what? What was is that it?
Yeah, I was a Cleveland Brown fan. I grew up, football was Cleveland Browns, baseball was Cincinnati Reds. And, I had a poster of Leroy Kelly in my room. So Leroy Kelly was the guy
No kidding.
I love to watch. Yeah.
Isn't that something? That's great stuff.
Great. So how would you, thinking back, what would be some of your highlights playing for Woody Hayes? What was that like? What was it behind the scenes?
Oh, wow. I mean, Woody, it was just amazing. Every day was a different day. And he was just something else. He loved his players. Obviously, he was very emotional, very intense, and he was intense every single day of practice. And but you always knew that he cared about you. He cared about your family. He cared about you getting schoolwork done. But man, the stories on Woody I don't think we have enough time to go through them all. He at Michigan, we're playing Michigan. I mean, he literally hated Michigan. And
I'm sure.
We're in the locker room before the Michigan game in Michigan. And he's punching the blackboard, puts a hole in the blackboard. He's banging his head up against the lockers, just going crazy, getting us fired up, which it works. And so he said, "Hey, we're going to come out fighting. We're going to come out of this tunnel. We're going to come out fighting." So, we just thought that was just a, saying. And so in Michigan, you come out your locker room and go down the tunnel, and then you take a hard left to go to your bench. And then Michigan comes out and they run through a group of student body that have formed a line. And so we come out our tunnel and run down the hill, and instead of taking a hard left, Woody runs right into the student body and starts a fight. So, he said we were going to come out fighting. So, but he did something like that every day at practice, so it was just a great man, a great person to play for.
Mm-hmm.
When you're around people like that, Doug, you talk about being a great man, a great person. We always learn things from him that maybe affect us and touch our lives even decades later. I just wondered, I don't want to say role model, but a lot of times you learn from a coach, from a dad, from a principal, from just somebody that you met on the street that you had no idea who he was or what he was all about until he shared something with you. How about Woody? Was there one or two things that come to mind that are a part of your life today or a part of your personality as a result of being with him at Ohio State?
100%. I was blessed to play under Woody Hayes, Tom Landry, and Mike Ditka. And so, yeah, Woody, he taught us so many things. And one thing, this is a very simple thing, but, you look at my kids when they're sitting down, Woody always says, your mind assumes the position of your body. So when people came in the room, they're sitting straight up. He said, your mind assumes the position of your body. And so I'd come into the dinner table at home and I'd say to my boys, your mind assumes the position of your body, sit up straight. He told us, the one thing that really stuck out with me is, he said the problem with youth today is they're better than they think they are. They don't have the confidence. They have so much more they can accomplish than what they think they can. And that's really true. I think that, youth go through life and, they doubt themselves, and if they had confidence in themselves, then they could go to another level. So Woody just preached to us that you're better than you think you are. And so that really stuck with me, to just believe in yourself. And then the last thing was, he just said, you know what, every day you have a chance. One of two things happen: you get better or you get worse. You don't stay the same. So you're going backwards or you're getting better. What are you going to do today? And there's so many more things, but those are the two or three things that stick out in my mind.
And then you end up going to the Dallas Cowboys, and somebody as reserved and dignified as Tom Landry was.
Oh
boy,
gosh.
Talk about a turnaround.
Yeah, it was
very different.
Yeah, I mean, Coach Hayes was just, like I said, so intense and verbal. And then you go to Coach Landry, and it's a totally different atmosphere. But the respect that he commanded was just amazing. The players, everyone towed the line with Coach Landry, from Tony Dorsett to Danny White to Randy White, Too Tall Jones. All those guys towed the line, and I want to say almost feared Coach Landry because of the respect that he commanded. And he didn't have to yell at you. The receivers were kind of a wild bunch. And so we might be down at our end of the field, kind of messing around, not taking things seriously. And Coach Landry didn't have to say a word. If he looked at you with his arms folded for more than 3 seconds, that was your sign that, hey guys, straighten up.
Well, I tell you what, I want you to hold that thought on Coach Landry. When we come back, think about it. Your favorite story of all time about Coach Landry, as we continue with this edition of Journey Through Sports and Life with one of the greats, wide receiver from the Dallas Cowboys, Doug Donley. We're right back after this. Welcome back to this edition of Journey Through Sports and Life. Marjorie and Marnie and Scott, along with Doug Donley, the former great wide receiver of the Dallas Cowboys, and of course, the Ohio State. We talked about Woody Hayes and your head coach there, and really your first big head coach like that. And then, of course, you go on to one of the legendary coaches, Hall of Famer, Pro Football Hall of Famer, Tom Landry. How about it? Tell us about maybe something that comes to mind. When I say Tom Landry, what you might have learned from him, maybe a great story that you shared with him. What comes to mind, Doug?
Coach Landry was just such a teacher of the game, and preparation was so key. And just the way he carried himself, with the respect and the self-control, and all the players, fell in line with that, and just the discipline. I guess a funny story that comes to my mind was, I came in and, as a rookie, you kind of stay quiet and, just take your place in line. And, I'm there with 3 great wide receivers, Drew, Tony, and Butch. And so I got some playing time and had some, had a couple good games, and I was still the 4th receiver. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to go talk to Coach Landry. I'm going to get a one-on-one meeting with Coach Landry. So I'm feeling pretty bold to second-year player say, I want to meet with Coach Landry. So I asked him for a meeting. We went in one of the meeting rooms, and I said, hey, Coach, I said, I just don't think I'm the 4th receiver on this team. I think that, I should be higher than the 4th receiver and should be getting more playing time. And he said, well, Doug, he goes, you may be the maybe third receiver on the team, but right now I have you at the fourth, and that's the way it's going to stay. That was the end of the meeting. So you learned real quick, just
There's no discussion.
there's no discussion.
Yeah, but it's okay. And I have a couple questions for you, but along those lines, it's kind of like, Tom Landry is similar to the voice of God. When the Eagles lost the Super Bowl in 1981, my grandfather turned to Cardinal Kroll and he said, Cardinal, I brought you here. You were going to pray and we were going to win this thing. And the Cardinal says, Leonard, I had many conversations with God. We talked about winning the Super Bowl. And my grandfather says, yeah, but what? And he said, the answer was no. Okay, okay, you got to just move on. All right,
Yeah.
You can't argue with Tom Landry. That's what he said. You can't argue with God. Okay, but moving right along, when you are in college and you're getting coached by, the legendary coach Woody Hayes, and he talks about believing in himself, or believing in yourself rather. Now you're coaching your kids and you're coaching other kids. How do you tell them, what is your method to educate them on believing in themselves? How do you do that? I mean, it's quite a skill.
Yeah, it was so important to me because I know through my career, you may doubt yourself, you have a bad game or a bad practice, and it was a constant battle to believe in yourself until you get established. And so I came up with an acronym for my kids, and it was BAM, BAM. The B was believe in yourself. The A was have a good attitude, positive attitude. And the M was mental toughness. And so I had t-shirts made up and I drilled it in my kids, and they still believe it, still use that today, the BAM. And,
That's great.
every time we'd get in the huddle, we'd put our hands in 1, 2, 3, BAM. And yeah, you just can't underestimate the value of that, and not just in sports, but in anything you do. So it was, yeah.
Doug, obviously you believed in yourself, because when you have an injury in high school, yet you still continued to be a high school athlete. A lot of kids or families would have said, oh, got an injury, I'm going to back off, or I'm just going to do whatever. So who inspired you to keep on going, and how much mental toughness did you have to play through the injury?
Yeah, that's a good question. The M is so important. And again, no matter what you're doing in life, it's mental toughness, because you're going to get knocked down. And, what are you going to do? You're going to stay there. You're going to get back up. And so my shoulder injury in high school was pretty serious. They put a pin in it my sophomore year. And I literally couldn't lift my arm above my head, but, quitting was just never an option. And, I think my dad may have instilled that mental toughness in me. He was a tough guy, he was in the Navy and he was just a tough guy, but it's a mentality that you have that you just don't quit and you just keep going through pain or whatever. And, that's kind of the, there's a lot of people that have the ability to succeed in whether it's sports or business or whatever it may be, but not everyone has the mental toughness to endure the ups and downs. And so that mental toughness is just as important as the believing in yourself.
Well, I can see that is important to you. I did some creeping on your Twitter today, and I saw that you had a link to a Notre Dame speech. I think it might have been one of the coaches talking about how you don't really know what you can do until you've overcome some adversities, some hardship and that kind of thing. So that does seem very much a part of your message.
Yeah, it's just you get to that point where you just no matter what happens, you don't think negatively. You think, okay, what am I going to do now, and how am I going to turn this around? You don't have the attitude of, oh gosh, I failed, it's over. That just doesn't creep into your mind. And you can preach that, and hopefully it sticks with the kids, because as we all know, you're going to have ups and you're going to have downs, and right. You got to fight through those and believe in yourself and come back.
So I do have to ask you this, and I mentioned it a little bit in the beginning in the intro, but I was watching the football game with my father back in the day when Woody Hayes punched the Michigan player. So can you tell us about what was it like on the sidelines when you guys realized that it happened? What happened when you came back on the plane and you got back to Ohio? What was that whole experience?
Yeah, so it was a Gator Bowl and we were playing Clemson. And so I was on the
It
field
was Clemson.
and I was the intended receiver on the play, and Keith Jackson, the play-by-play, was talking, and I'm in the end zone wide open, and I see all this commotion on the sideline, and I saw that the ball got intercepted, and so I come out of the end zone and up to the field and I say, hey, what happened? And they said, well, Woody hit a guy. And I'm like, okay, so he hit somebody every day at practice, They said, no, he hit a guy from the other team. I'm like, okay, well, so. And so anyway, we played the game and, we lost, and Woody calls us up in the locker room after the game. And when Woody talked, he always kind of whispered and he always repeated himself. And so he called us up and he goes, everybody up here, everybody up here. So we all get in the huddle around Woody, and I won't do it word for word what he said, but he said, you probably think I'm sorry I hit that guy, don't you? Don't you? And we're like, maybe, national TV, hit the guy on the other team. He goes, well, you know what? The bleep bleep, he had it coming. He had it coming. And he paused and he goes, do you know why? Do you know why? And we're just waiting. He goes, because his great-great-grandfather killed my great-great-grandfather in the Civil War.
Oh, wow.
So Woody was a big war buff, and we knew at that point in time, Woody may have lost it a little bit. And so we got on the plane, flew back to Columbus, and when we landed, Woody got up and on the intercom system on the plane, stood up and said, I'm sorry to announce I'm no longer the head football coach at Ohio State. And he got off the plane and nobody moved for 40 minutes. We just sat there on the plane, and then one guy got up and we just kind of filed off after that. So,
oh my gosh, that must have just been quite an experience. So did that have an impact on you in any way moving forward, or anything in your life since then?
Just, knowing Woody as far as that incident, we knew what kind of person he was. He, like I say, he'd punch guys all the time, and he was an old man, and his punches couldn't hurt, but you still didn't want to get punched for him. One time I was going downfield in practice, and a ball went off my hands and it got intercepted, and Woody hated interceptions. He hated, any mistakes. And so I saw him come out of the huddle. I was about 40 yards downfield, and he came waddling towards me. And I'm like, oh boy, I'm going to get punched. And so instead of jogging back to the huddle, I started walking back to the huddle, and Woody got tired of waiting for me, and he went back and started punching the quarterback. So,
oh gosh.
But
and the quarterback's yelling, hustle.
Yeah, exactly. So, but no, everything was good memories with Woody, because you just know how much he cared about you.
Yeah. Wow. What a story. I don't know that I've ever heard before that he had claimed that there was any kind of connection other than just the moment, with the Clemson receiver. Wasn't it a receiver that was running down the sideline right in front of
guard? It was the middle guard that caught the ball.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't remember the play exactly, because all I remember is the punch.
Yeah. Everyone remembers the punch.
Yeah, we all remember the punch. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And you hate to see,
my dad and I were just like, did that just happen? Talking.
And you hate to see a legacy like he had, turned around from one punch or anything like that. So, it's crazy how things work in this world. So, yeah, it really is. Our special guest on this edition of Journey Through Sports and Life, Doug Donley, the former wide receiver at The Ohio State, and of course, the Dallas Cowboys back in the 1980s with Tom Landry and Mike Ditka and Hall of Famer Drew Pearson, of course, who's been on this show already. So delighted to have Doug on board. We're going to be back with lots more as we continue on with Marjorie, Marnie, and yours truly right after this break. Welcome back as we continue on this weekend with Journey Through Sports and Life. Scott, Marjorie, and Marnie, and we're delighted to have Doug Donley, the former wide receiver of the Dallas Cowboys back in the decade of the 80s. And Doug, as you think back to, gosh, it's hard to believe because you don't look that old, but 40 years ago, for Pete's sake. And I just wondered, as you think about your time with the Cowboys, and you already have known what it was like to be in Dallas and play with the Cowboys, and certainly with Tom Landry. But I just wondered, as a kid coming out of the Ohio State, you've got somebody like Woody Hayes that you've been with, and all of a sudden you're going to Tom Landry and the Dallas Cowboys. Oh my gosh, what was that like? What did you think when you got drafted by the Cowboys?
Yeah, I mean, the Dallas Cowboys have always been, America's team. And so when I got the call that they were going to draft me, and I was told that I was going to be drafted by the Buffalo Bills, which I was scared to death. I had to go up to Buffalo, but they drafted another wide receiver, thank goodness. And so the Cowboys called and Gil Brandt called, and so they drafted me. So I was just thrilled to death until I got, I left Ohio State, right? And we had incredible facilities, playing in front of 100,000 people, and big locker room, plush locker room. And I come to Dallas and I show up at Forest Lane and Abrams, and I pull into a gravel parking lot in a tin building, weight sitting outside. And I'm like, okay, I'm getting pranked here. Where's the Cowboys? So yeah, that was kind of a shock. And in every locker, there was a little silver thing. I'm like, what is that silver thing? And it was an ashtray. Every locker had an ashtray. I'm like, who smokes?
It was a different world.
Right.
Yeah, times have changed, huh?
Yeah. So, but
at least you didn't smoke in the huddle. Didn't Bobby Lane used to smoke in the huddle?
Yeah, exactly. But when I got to my locker and I'm sitting there, and I got my locker and I looked to my left to see who my locker mate was right next to me, and I had to look up, and it was 6'9", Too Tall Jones, and I'm kind of looking at him out of the corner of my eyes, and I'm like, what am I doing here? I'm not big enough to play here. So people said I was fast. I was scared. But yeah, so it was just crazy to look around and see all the guys that I grew up and watched and heard about, and you see Dorsett and Harvey Martin and Too Tall and Randy White, and the list goes on. And so it was surreal, but it was just an incredible experience, because all those guys today are still just great friends. I saw Drew yesterday and we talked, and I named my son after Drew Pearson. So yeah, it was an incredible experience to be a part of that organization, and the coaches and all the players.
So what was a bigger transition for you, coming from a small town high school, going to Ohio State, or Ohio State to the Dallas Cowboys?
Good question. I actually think that going from little town Cambridge to Ohio State was bigger transition for me. I was young, I was naive, and you get thrusted into that world, and it's different. And so it kind of initiates you to get ready for the next level, right? And so I was initiated and kind of knew what to expect with, the life of a professional athlete. So yeah.
Did you have to work a second job too? I know Drew was telling us about selling shoes and different things. Did you have to in those days? And if you did, what'd you do?
Yeah, I had when I bought a business early on, I bought a tennis and health club. And so I managed that in the off season and ran that, which was fun and really introduced me to business and all that. And
where was it located?
It was in Texas. It was in a city called Garland, Texas. And we had 10 tennis courts, workout area, and it was just a beautiful piece of property. And so, yeah, I owned that for a while. And so that was really my work in the off season.
And that kind of introduced to you what you're doing now. Tell us what, your business and, what that's all about.
Yeah, so I got into the golf business, oh gosh, I don't even know how many years ago, 25, 30 years ago. And the guy that started the hole-in-one business, which, and you know, I was talking to Drew yesterday, and he's like, I don't understand what you do. I know the name of what you do, but I don't understand it. And so basically we insure contests where
Oh,
someone can win a grand prize. Okay, it may be $1 million, it may be a trip to the Super Bowl, it may be, you know, $100,000 cash. A sponsor will pay us a premium to insure that prize. And if X happens, then we write them a check for the prize. They pay us a premium. For instance, a hole-in-one contest, a dealer will put a car dealer will put a car out on a par 3. If someone hits a hole-in-one, we write a check to the dealer for the car. They paid us an insurance premium to cover that.
oh,
We do halftime promotions where they'll pull somebody out of the stands and shoot a shot from half court. Those are insured promotions. If someone makes that half court shot, we pay off the prize. And so we do all kinds of events across the United States, and it's just a fun business. We're kind of in the background of the promotion. You can Google, there's a Ole Miss did a halftime basketball promotion where a car dealer had sponsored the event, and they pull someone out of the stands at the Ole Miss basketball game, and she had to putt from one end line to the other end line.
oh, I've seen that. Yeah.
It was an 84-year-old lady,
Yes.
right? And you got to Google 84-year-old lady Ole Miss, and it's got 1 million some views. And she got up and she's putting on a basketball court, and at the end is a board, a sponsor board with a little hole cut out. And so that's what she had to make it through. She got up there, and I'm watching it live, and I'm like, she takes a practice putt. I'm like, this lady golfs. I can tell by
She
her.
knows what she's doing.
And she putted from the length, one end line to the other baseline and made it. And the place went crazy. And so we got so much business from that because they called Ole Miss and said, you know, who did that promotion for you? But yeah, so those are some of the things we do, and it's fun.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's great
Yeah,
stuff.
that is. That's great. So I
Marnie,
have
jump
another
on board.
question. We,
wait,
I'm sorry.
Marjorie.
I was just curious, you know, we had talked about Woody Hayes and his style of coaching. You have a son now who's a freshman at the University of Cincinnati. So just how has coaching changed? Would Woody Hayes have made it with that style today?
Well, you know, I coached Drew and Jake all through their little league years. And I don't know if I'm sorry to say, I was more the Woody Hayes type than the Tom Landry type. So they got used to that.
Like Coach
that's
Marnie
funny.
said, either you win with enthusiasm or you get fired with enthusiasm. So
Exactly.
you know, it's interesting. And how did the kids respond to that kind of coaching?
You know, they at first they were scared, but then they realized that I was intense. I had high expectations. I wanted them to give me 100% effort, and you know, they all thank me for that now because they understand. And you know, things have changed. You can't really you know, you can't do that. It's different now. And so could Woody Hayes make it in today's world? Somehow I believe, as crazy as he was, he would, just because people just were drawn to him because they knew how much he cared about the players, and they also knew he was very intense. But yeah, it's a different ball game today. You have to, you know, kind of tiptoe a little bit, I think. And so
Let me ask you this, Doug. I've talked to people like yourselves that have been in the NFL or been in the NBA and whatever, and talked about how they taught their sons, or how they just prepared their sons for the world of sports and where they had been and what they had done. And some of the kids, they said, were really intimidated by, oh, Dad, I'll never be as good as you. Oh, Dad, I'll never live up to your expectation. Oh, gosh, Dad, I'm not you. I can't do that. I just wondered, did you ever have any of that? Or what were some of the best advice that you gave your boys so that they would believe in you and just say, hey, that's our dad. He was great, and we want to be just like him?
Yeah, I mean there's no doubt that that feeling is prevalent in kids that have a dad that plays at the next level, and that pressure to, I think, live up to that. And you know, I just worked with my kids, at a very young age. I didn't push them into it; that they loved it, and they excelled. And I continually preach to them, the BAM, the believe in yourself and be mentally tough. And so, Drew in particular has taken that on and really said that I want to take your path. And so, the hard work and dedication that both my boys put into their work is just something that's ingrained in them. And, like I teach them, that what he taught us, what are you going to do today? Are you going to get better or are you going to get worse? You're not going to stay the same. And it's not easy. If it was easy, everyone would do it, right? And so you just preach that into them. And then, I remember before I had kids, I asked other dads players, I said, what would you do differently? And it was interesting. A lot of them said, I wouldn't have been as soft on my kids as I was. I would have been harder on them and held them more accountable. And so, my dad, I grew up in that atmosphere. My dad held me accountable for everything that I did. And so, that's where I brought my boys up.
And how is it? Okay, so watching your kids play football or play sports, my boys, my older son played football in high school, and my daughter actually is a sophomore at App State. So they're very excited in Boone, North Carolina right now.
Right.
Getting ready for college game day to show up there and see what happens. And my youngest is a senior in high school playing football. So I obviously love the game of football, but I didn't play the game of football. So when you watch your sons, are you like, how is it like, are you cringing or are you, how do you react to, are you worried about them getting injured?
Yeah, it's probably harder to watch them than it was to play.
Yeah.
I can't explain to you what it's like. I mean, yes, all those of excitement, of fear of them getting hurt. Drew played last week, and it's his first time he got in. He was a redshirt freshman, and I'm at the game, and someone said, Drew's in. It was the first play he ever got in, and the people around me probably thought, what's going on with this guy? I'm like, oh my gosh. And it was special teams. But yeah, I was a nervous wreck. I mean, this guy's, he's 4'3", he's strong, but the number one thing you think about is, number one, I don't want you to get hurt. That's my number one concern. And two, you want them to perform well, because you don't want that to affect their psyche, their confidence. And of course, nowadays, you make a mistake, then Twitter's going to blow you up, and then you got to deal with that. So those are the things as a parent that you worry about. It's first, injury. Second is, I hope you perform so that you can, feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
How grateful
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Exist back in the old days, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Do you imagine? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you drop a pass today. One of Drew's former teammates, his first year in the league, and he had a great spring camp, and his first game, Sunday, and he dropped the pass, and Twitter just blows him up. It's just so mean, but that's part of the world right now, right?
Social media, that's what it's all about. You got that right. Doug Donley is our special guest. We're going to be back with some final thoughts as we continue on with this edition of Journey Through Sports and Life right after this. Welcome back to Journey Through Sports and Life. Great to have you along, and we've really enjoyed the last hour thereabouts with Doug Donley, the former wide receiver of the Dallas Cowboys back in the decade of the 80s. One of the great ball players, but maybe even more importantly, one of the really good guys. So I just, as we talk about all that we've shared the last hour here thereabouts, Doug, what is it that you would like your legacy to be? Somebody says Doug Donley. I mean, you've got such a great reputation in town, certainly in Dallas, and for that matter, around the NFL, certainly for people that knew football back in the 80s. What comes to mind?
Well, thank you for those words. Playing sports was just such a great experience for me. And, I was fortunate to have a great high school and college career, and in the NFL it was shortened by injuries, but I was blessed to play with some great people, great coaches, great teammates that are still friends, and so those relationships are so important to me. When I think about legacy, I really, my biggest accomplishment is, being a father and having two boys and bringing them up and being a husband and father, and just trying to make an impact on, other kids and people that, and all the different things we do, whether it's an appearance or a camp and things like that. And because you understand how fragile, youth are. And so again, Woody talked about, the problem with youth is they're better than they think they are. And so, that's really, my family, my boys, that's really what's really important. The football and the sports was just a great experience and something I'll treasure for the rest of my life.
Great answer. Great answer. We got about a minute left. Marnie, got a question?
So, Doug, how do people find, so now we know you're doing a really cool business. How do people find you? How can they connect with you and use your business and maybe even hear a story or two? Because I'm sure they'd love to hear some stories or Woody Hayes stories, or it might be stories.
Advantage HIO, and the HIO stands for Advantage Hole in One. So advantagehio.com. And, we can do things from golf tournaments to charity functions to any type of promotion to drive business to or traffic to a particular business. But yeah, you can Google us, Advantage Hole in One, and get to myself or anybody, and we can tell you the things we can do. And it's a lot of fun.
That is great. Well, I'm sure that people are going to be calling up Advantage, or no, actually nowadays emailing. My kids say, you don't call Uber, Mom, you request an Uber.
Come on, Mom.
Call them, but they'll be
this is the 21st century, Mom. Come on. What do you say?
That's right.
Doug Donley, you've been a rock star. We can't thank you enough. Just like watching in the field 40 years ago. So thank you so much for being here. And we thank all of you for being in our audience today. So until next time, for this edition of Journey Through Sports and Life, I'm Scott Murray, along with
Marjorie Herrera-Lewis
and Marnie Schneider.
Till next time, for Doug Donley and all of us, stay well, everybody.